Alright, so today I want to introduce to you the most famous ball python in the history of reptile keepers, and that is the Stormtrooper ball python. And if you haven't seen it, it's a pretty incredible snake. It is stark black and white, really high contrast. No one has really ever seen anything like it since it's been produced, and there's a really interesting story behind it. As a matter of fact, I went to the NARBC reptile show in Tinley Park about 5 or 6 years ago. It was my very first time at Tinley Park, and it was pretty amazing. I was walking up and down the aisles, and I saw this booth with a whole bunch of Star Wars memorabilia. And I was, wait a minute, are they selling Star Wars stuff, or are they selling ball pythons? And I walked up to their booth, and I looked down, and I saw this, this black and white snake for $50,000. I was like, that is the most expensive snake that I have ever stood next to. It was pretty incredible. Come to find out that that snake was the only one in the whole world, and it is called the Stormtrooper, produced by J.D. Constrictors. And as the story goes, apparently he was breeding some ball pythons together, and he works pretty much solely in axanthic ball pythons, which is a recessive mutation, strips away all the color except for the black and the white. It's pretty interesting, and he bred some snakes together, thought he was going to get a pastel axanthic, which is what he thought it was at first, and as it grew, every shed that it went through, it changed drastically. It changed and changed and changed, and then it turned into what we know now is pretty much the world famous Stormtrooper ball python. It is pretty incredible. I'm going to show you a picture of the Stormtrooper, and the funny thing is as soon as I was introduced to the Stormtrooper and I saw how amazing that snake was, it actually went through another transformation, and every shed it went through, it got darker and darker and darker until I have another picture of the kind of the blackened Stormtrooper, which is kind of interesting. It's definitely, I'd say it's definitely not as impressive as it was as a hatchling, and it's amazing how some snakes can change from one thing to another as they grow and mature. And the other really interesting thing is you talk to the guys from JD Constriction, and they really don't know what comprises the Stormtrooper. It was really unexpected, and there's a few rumors floating around out there. He said there's some speculation that some people think it may be a desert ghost axanthic. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if you went back to them and said, hey, do you think this is a desert ghost axanthic, if they would tell you for sure. But that's kind of my speculation. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of people that saw the Stormtrooper and they kind of had their own idea. Hey, let's try desert ghost axanthic and see if it looks anything like the Stormtrooper. And the interesting thing as well is there's multiple types of axanthic. So this is a TSK axanthic. There's also a VPI axanthic and some other ones. But this is pretty much JD Constriction specializes in only axanthic. And I kind of want to show you the Stormtrooper when it was young, how impressive it was, and how it got older and faded to black. And then I want to show you Morph Market and JD Constriction's snakes for sale, some of the stuff they have posted for sale, some of the stuff that they've sold. And it's pretty impressive. A reptile breeder, a ball python breeder only specializing in axanthics, which is pretty rare. You know, you look at my collection and I have clowns and pieds and spiders, and I'm kind of all over the place with bamboo. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about getting into axanthics. I don't have any in my collection, and I was thinking about picking up some from JD Constriction just to dabble in it. And personally, you know, as a breeder, I like to have a table at the show with a whole variety of snakes, and that's why I really don't go deep into any one specific morph. But you go to someone like this that's really laser focused on one specific morph like axanthic, and let me tell you, they have some incredible snakes, and they can produce some stuff that nobody else is producing. So I want to show you on my computer some of the stuff that they made. Some of these ball pythons, they are amazing, and I want to start out showing you what the Stormtrooper looks like. Alright, so this is the Stormtrooper. This is what it looked like back in the glory days when it used to be be a little bit younger, and this is pretty much what caught worldwide attention. This snake doesn't even look real. It looks completely different than any other snake that I have ever seen. And the funny thing is when I actually saw this at the Tinley Park NARBC, it actually was transitioning between this and eventually what it became. And you're not going to believe this. It completely transformed, and if you see the new snake, it looks nothing like the old snake. And this is the Stormtrooper. This is what it transformed into, which is pretty amazing. You would never guess that this was actually the same snake that I just showed you. So what I'm going to do from here is go into Morph Market. And I actually went to Morph Market here. I pulled up everything that is sold and available from JD Constriction. And this is sorted from high price to low price. So this is really the high-end stuff that they have available, and some of the stuff that they sold. They have one that's sold, you don't know how much it is. It just says Inquire. This is actually a pastel SKA Xanthic Clown. Here's another one. It's a GHI Spider SKA Xanthic Clown for $10,000. I mean, there's some pretty high prices on some of this stuff if you really focus on one niche and you go deep into the Axanthics. This is some really awesome stuff. He's doing some really amazing stuff with this Axanthic stuff. And I was kind of, looking through some of this stuff. This leopard Axanthic right here, this looks really crazy. $4,000. Some of this stuff, is pretty much out of my price range. Here's a fire Axanthic Het Clown. So he's, has some of this Het Clown stuff that, he's been working into the clowns. Of course, you have Het Clowns as a result. Some of this stuff is pretty amazing. Look at this one. Fire Bumblebee Yellow Belly Axanthic. That one, it almost looks like it has spider in it. It's really wild. Here's another one. Firefly Enchi Axanthic. Some of these right here, these top three right here, these are probably the most impressive that I've seen. And this is, you're still looking at about $3,000 a snake. So, it's quite a bit to get into one of these projects like this. And it really depends what you're shooting for. Personally, I'd like to do, especially with a recessive, I'd probably go with an Axanthic with another kind of recessive. Here's a pastel Enchi Axanthic for $2,000. So, it's holding its price pretty well here. And if you look at some of this, some of these here, for example, this is Pastel Clown Possible Het Axanthic. So he's even got possible hets that he's selling, that are clowns, working into some of these projects. It's kind of like what I'll do, if I get like an albino pied possible Het Clown or something like that, as the further on you go, the further kind of diluted it gets. This is pretty nice, a Firefly SKA Xanthic. It looks really high contrast. And a lot of these, here is one that's interesting, a pastel scaleless head Het Axanthic. So he's trying to work scaleless heads into the Axanthics. It's always interesting to see what people have for sale, because then you kind of know what they're working on in the back of the scene. So, if he's working scaleless head into this, he's shooting for a totally scaleless Axanthic. So you can kind of get an idea what people are working on. And this one is, I'd say, probably as close as I have ever seen to the Stormtrooper, which is a Firefly Axanthic. And just take a look at this. I actually expanded it over here. Firefly SK Xanthic. Let me tell you, for $1,200, if this one wasn't sold, I'd be getting out my checkbook today and I'd have that shipped to my door. That is as close to the Stormtrooper as I have ever seen. It is a pretty amazing snake. As a matter of fact, I can't believe it's only $1,200. I would have marked that way up just because of how close it is to the Stormtrooper. And you can see these guys are in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I actually watched a video and they kind of have, a collection that's probably twice as big as mine. So it's a decent sized collection. And both him and his wife are working day jobs. So they're kind of doing this as a side hustle, which is pretty impressive for that big of an operation. It's pretty incredible. So if we look through just a few more of these, he's got some that are close to the Stormtrooper, but nothing that really, you know, looks exactly like it. And as you get further down, you get some of the stuff that's kind of further away from the Stormtrooper. And the prices, you know, if you're looking for Axanthics kind of at the low end, there's some really interesting stuff down at the low end. You could pick up, you know, here's a pastel Axanthic for female for $500. That's a pretty screaming deal right there. And you know, if you're just looking for the Axanthic, I think once you mix the fire and the pastel and the yellow belly in, it really cleans it up. So for example, here's a pastel SK Axanthic for $350. That's a pretty screaming deal. And one of my favorite combos is when you mix the spider in. Of course, there's a lot of people against the spider because of the head wobble, and there's some people for it. Personally, I kind of like the spiders, especially if you can mix it in with other combos and, you know, kind of avoid the head wobble. Here's one with just the SK Axanthic, a female for $250, which is pretty cool. You know, I'd almost consider breeding this to my albino pied and then get some triple hets out of that, and then you can have albino pied Axanthic or the pied Axanthic, which is pretty cool. Axanthic pieds, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they're really impressive. Still holding their value. Not a lot of people into the Axanthic pieds. So this just kind of gives you an idea of kind of what he's working with and some of the prices and some of the really cool stuff that's out there that's pretty close to the Stormtrooper. Okay, so there you have it. That is the most famous snake on the planet. That is the Stormtrooper. And personally, I'd really like to see what the genetics are behind it. Hopefully they can figure it out, because I would definitely love to get into that project. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.